Hello, welcome back. Or if this is your first time in my channel, then welcome to this channel. So today I'm going to talk about two of my favorite subjects, spiral dynamics and consciousness progression in general. And this is also, these are very foundational topics for this channel. So this is a really good video to watch if you are new to this channel. So first, what do I mean by consciousness progression? Basically, development of the mind. I could say mental development, but I feel like there's this connotation to that phrase that we're talking about something that involves the physical brain, and I'm not. I'm talking about something that is only very tangentially related to the physical brain. And also there's this tendency in Western culture, I think, to assume that development ends at some point, that at some point you are developed, you're done, you're an adult, and there's no more development after that. So I do sometimes use the word development in the same way as the word progression, but I kind of prefer the word progression because it has this open-ended connotation to it that you might keep progressing until you die. So consciousness progression, development of the mind, basically. Early childhood development, that field of study is a great example of something that studies this. It's pretty easy to notice that a teenager thinks differently than a 3-year-old, and that the teenager and the 3-year-old perceive themselves differently and perceive the world differently. So that's consciousness progression, and that's covered in childhood development, that field. But there's also adult development past childhood, and you can think about how a 70-year-old might think about themselves and the world, might perceive themselves and the world, versus a 21-year-old. In fact, if you've been on online forums interacting with people that you've never met and never seen, you might have noticed that sometimes you can kind of make a guesstimate about how old the person is that you're talking to, that you're interacting with, just based on the kinds of things that they discuss and how they discuss them, basically like their maturity level. So that's what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about consciousness progression. I'm talking about human maturation, mentally, not physically. And there are many different approaches to this, to studying this. There are many different models of this in many different cultures throughout history. It's something that people have been fascinated with. One thing that has been noticed in many cultures and in many different fields of study is that people seem to generally progress through the same stages of development and in roughly the same order, regardless of other factors like race, gender, culture, neurotype, like whether you're neurotypical or ADHD or autistic, like you still go through these stages, and in roughly the same order. Personality type doesn't change that. What interests you have or hobbies you have doesn't change that. Your level of education might affect it, but it doesn't change which stages you go through and in what order. That said, not everybody goes through these stages at the same pace. So sometimes you'll meet somebody who's in their early 20s and they just seem wise beyond their years. Well, that is possibly because they have been progressing their consciousness faster than most people by that age. Um, and also, um, not everybody continues progressing throughout their lives. It's pretty common in like early adulthood to find a stage of consciousness, like you progress a certain degree, and then you find a stage of consciousness that's in this like homeostasis with your culture, and it's very comfortable. So you stay there. And many people don't actually progress their consciousness much um, in their adult lives. So they'll get to a certain point in their early adulthood, and then they'll stay there for the rest of their lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually quite healthy. In fact, I think I think most people would consider that normal. um, so, what is spiral dynamics? Spiral dynamics is a model or map of these stages and their sequence that was developed by Don Beck and Christopher Cowan. Here's the original book, um, based on the work of their mentor, Claire Graves. And then the spiral dynamics model has been developed beyond their work as well. I believe both Don Beck and Christopher Cowan are now deceased, but many other people have taken up this model and developed it further in a variety of ways. They don't always agree with each other, but that's what makes it interesting. It's also definitely not the only model. There are other models that are like Western contemporary, more academic models. Like this is Suzanne Cook Greuter's book, which is getting glare. I hope you can see that. Called Post-Autonomous Ego Development, a study of its nature and measurement. This is a very academic book. It was her dissertation, but it's very good, and it's a similar kind of model. It's got a slightly different lineage, but it's got basically the same assumptions, that there are stages of development that we go through in a consistent order. And there are models of this throughout history. You'll find them in ancient Greek philosophy. You'll find them in India, Tibet, China. The chakras are actually a really great example of a like linear progression of consciousness that is visualized as being in the body. Actually, the way that Kundalini yoga uses the chakras is an interesting parallel model of this. And there are so many others. No model is perfect. Every model is, by definition, a simplification of what's really happening. So every model is going to have its pros and cons. What I like about the spiral dynamics model is that it sort of hits that sweet spot between being complex enough to be useful while being simple enough that you can explain it to somebody. I also like that it uses a spiral as its basis, because I have long felt, long before I heard about spiral dynamics, I have long felt that life is kind of like a spiral. It's not this purely linear progression where you never experience the same thing twice. It's also not a perfect circle where you're experiencing the exact same thing over and over and over again. It's not a pure cycle like that. Instead, you're experiencing the same things over and over again, but they're changing. Like it's like you can imagine it as layers. Like you experience the first layer of a set of experiences, and then you move up and you experience another layer, of those same experiences, and then you move up and you experience another layer of those experiences. So life is kind of like a spiral. So when I found spiral dynamics and it was called that, I was like, ooh, this is cool. They're speaking my language. So this was just the briefest of overviews. I mean, these two subjects are huge, and I'm thoroughly fascinated by both of them. So I have a lot that I can share, both from my own experiences and also from my research. But I want to keep these videos relatively short to give you, well, if you're binge watching, to encourage you to take a break between them and give you some time to let your brain soak. Um, I expect my next video is probably going to be, again, a fairly brief overview, but at this time of the spiral dynamics model itself, how they break down the stages, how they characterize them. So if these subjects interest you, then like this video, post your comments and questions below, and I'll do my best to respond. And subscribe, hit the bell button. Oh, and if you're watching this shortly after I'm posting it, I'm going to put some links in the description below for research that you can do on your own while you're waiting for my next video. I'll put a link to the original book, in case you want the information from the horse's mouths, as it were. And I'll also put a couple of links to other playlists by other content creators that I think are good. There's a playlist by Leo Gura from actualized.org that was actually my first introduction to spiral dynamics. That's very thorough. And then I'm also going to put a link to a spiral dynamics playlist by Chris from Shores of Infinity. He does a really good job of speaking from his own experiences and from the experiences of people he knows, about the later stages in consciousness progression. So enjoy those links, and I will see you again soon.